Chosen one. When they came for you with intent to end your story, something irreversible happened in the unseen, and the life that was meant to replace yours is the one that fell instead, leaving you standing in the aftermath of a battle you survived without even realizing how close it truly was. There was a moment you never saw, a convergence of forces you never heard, a decision made beyond human sight, where the trajectory of existence itself shifted because you were not meant to be removed. What was aimed at you did not simply miss. It rebounded, reversed, and completed its work elsewhere. This is not about fear, and it is not about ego. This is about understanding that your survival was not accidental. You were preserved while something else was concluded. And that realization alone should change how you breathe, how you stand, and how you move through what comes next. Stay with this message until the very end, because what unfolds here is layered, and each layer reveals something you were never told, but always felt. In this moment, as you listen, write your warmest wishes in the comments and seal them with Amen, not as a habit, but as a conscious act of alignment, because wishes spoken with intention do not disappear. They organize energy, they set direction, and they quietly begin moving realities into place when the timing is right. Now understand this clearly. The reason you feel different after certain storms in your life is because some of those storms were never meant to destroy you. They were meant to expose what could not touch you. When they came for you, it wasn't just an attack on your body, your name, or your position. It was an attempt to interrupt a sequence already in motion. And when that attempt failed, the consequence did not remain neutral. Something else absorbed the ending that was prepared for you. This is why your survival feels heavy at times. You're not carrying guilt, you're carrying awareness. There are moments when you wonder why things around you seem to collapse while you remain standing, sometimes shaken, sometimes scarred, but never removed. People disappear. Situations end abruptly. Paths close with no explanation. And yet, you remain. This is not coincidence. It is not luck. It is not superiority. It is assignment. When they came for you, they underestimated what was guarding you, and more importantly, they misunderstood what would happen if they failed. You were not spared so you could return to normal. You were spared so you could no longer pretend you are ordinary. That chapter of unconscious living ended the moment the threat passed and you were still breathing. From that point forward, everything became intentional, whether you acknowledged it or not. Your sensitivity increased. Your tolerance for emptiness decreased. Your patience for lies wore thin. These are not personality changes. They are after effects. You survived something that completed its purpose without completing you. That is why certain people can no longer follow you. That is why familiar environments feel foreign. That is why old motivations no longer work. When a life ends in your place, even metaphorically, it creates a vacuum that demands truth. You cannot fill that space with distraction anymore. You cannot numb it. You cannot outrun it. You can only rise into what comes next. There is also a reason opposition intensifies after survival. What failed once does not always retreat quietly. It watches. It waits. It tests. But now it approaches you differently because you are no longer unmarked. You carry evidence. Not visible, but undeniable. Something tried to finish you and couldn't. That alone alters the balance of every room you enter, every conversation you're part of, every decision you make. You don't need to announce it. Presence does the announcing for you. This is why silence has become powerful for you. Why you no longer explain yourself the way you used to. Why you observe more and react less. Survival refined you. It stripped away excess. It removed the need to prove. And what remains is someone who understands that life is not guaranteed, but purpose is protected. Do not misunderstand this message as a promise of ease. Survival does not mean the road becomes soft. It means the road becomes meaningful. Every step from here on carries weight. Every choice echoes further. You are not being watched because you are famous or important by human standards. You are being watched because your continuation disrupted an outcome that was expected. There are those who sense this and feel uncomfortable around you without knowing why. There are those who feel exposed in your presence. There are those who feel compelled to test you, challenge you, provoke you. It is not personal. It is instinct. You represent a reminder that not everything goes according to plan, and not every target can be taken. What happened when they came for you did not end with that moment. It initiated a sequence, and sequences do not rush. They unfold. You are in the unfolding now. This is why timing matters more to you, why rushing feels wrong, why shortcuts no longer appeal to you. You understand, even if you can't explain it, that being early or being late can alter everything. You were not saved to stay hidden, but you were also not saved to perform. You were saved to become precise, to move when it's time, to speak when it's necessary, to stand when others fold, and sometimes, to walk away when staying would cost too much. If you feel the weight of this message, that is because it is speaking to something already awake in you. You don't need to force belief. Recognition is enough. The life that ended when they came for you cleared a path that cannot be undone. You are walking it now, whether you feel ready or not. And this is only the beginning of what you need to understand. The aftermath of survival is rarely loud. It doesn't arrive with celebration or clarity. It arrives quietly, through subtle shifts you can't fully explain, but can't ignore either. After they came for you and failed, the world didn't reset. It recalibrated. And you were placed into a version of reality where certain outcomes are no longer available to you. That's why some doors simply won't open anymore, no matter how hard you try. Not because you're blocked, but because you're no longer meant to enter rooms that belong to the version of you that didn't make it. This is where confusion often sets in. You start questioning your direction, your pace, even your identity. You feel delayed while others seem to move ahead. But what you're actually experiencing is separation. When a life ends in your place, alignment becomes non-negotiable. Anything misaligned begins to fall away on its own. You don't chase, you don't force. You witness things dismantle themselves. And that can feel lonely if you don't understand what's happening. What most people never realize is that survival carries responsibility. Not in a dramatic, heroic sense, but in a deeply internal way. You become accountable to the fact that you are still here. Your time starts to feel expensive. Wasted energy becomes unbearable. Meaningless conversations exhaust you. This is because part of you knows that your continuation wasn't random, so your choices can't be either. There is also a sharpening that happens. Your intuition grows louder, not because you suddenly became spiritual, but because you no longer have the luxury of ignoring warning signals. You've seen how close endings can come. You've felt how fast everything can change. So now, when something feels off, you don't rationalize it away like before. You listen. Survival trained you to listen. You may notice that people project things onto you that don't belong to you. Strength you don't claim. Intentions you didn't state. Expectations you never agreed to. This happens because when someone survives what was meant to finish them, others sense depth they can't define. Some admire it. Some resent it. Some fear it. None of that is your burden to carry. There will be moments when you're tempted to shrink yourself to make others comfortable again, to return to old versions of humility that were actually self-erasure. Don't. You didn't survive so you could disappear politely. You survived so you could stand honestly, quietly if needed, but firmly. Understand this as well. Not everything that ended around you was an enemy. Some things completed their role. Some people fulfilled their part in getting you to the moment you survived, and nothing more. Holding on to them out of nostalgia only delays what's next. Gratitude doesn't require attachment. You are also more protected than you realize, but protection now comes with discernment. You're expected to notice patterns, to read between lines, to sense when something is being repeated unnecessarily. Survival doesn't make you untouchable. It makes you aware. And awareness is what keeps you standing. If you feel pressure building lately, it's not a warning of loss. It's preparation for precision. You're being positioned into situations where your presence matters more than your performance, where who you are outweighs what you do, where staying true is more important than staying liked. The life that ended when they came for you left behind momentum. And that momentum is moving you forward whether you resist it or not. You don't need to rush it. You don't need to announce it. You only need to stop pretending you don't feel it. This is not the part where everything resolves. This is the part where everything clarifies. And clarity, once it arrives, cannot be unseen. There comes a stage after survival where the questions stop sounding dramatic and start sounding practical. You no longer ask, "Why me?" out of shock, but out of responsibility. Why am I still here? Why did that moment pass? Why did the damage stop just short of ending everything? These questions aren't meant to torment you. They're meant to ground you. They anchor you into the truth that your life continued for a reason that now requires your participation. This is also when you begin to notice how carefully circumstances start arranging themselves around you. Not always comfortably, not always kindly, but deliberately. You may find yourself placed in situations that test your integrity rather than your strength. Scenarios where the old version of you would have reacted impulsively, but the current version pauses. That pause is not hesitation. It is mastery forming. After they came for you, your life stopped being about momentum and started being about accuracy. Wrong choices feel heavier now. Not because they're more dangerous, but because you're more aware. You can sense when something would cost you more than it gives, even if it looks good on the surface. That awareness is one of the quiet rewards of survival. You might also notice a growing distance between you and people who once felt inseparable from you. This isn't always conflict. Often, it's silence, gaps in communication, a lack of resonance. This happens because not everyone can walk alongside someone who has crossed a threshold they themselves haven't faced. It's not judgment. It's difference in frequency. At this stage, restraint becomes one of your most powerful tools. You realize you don't need to correct every misunderstanding or defend every truth. Some things reveal themselves over time without your involvement. You've seen how quickly narratives can collapse on their own. Survival taught you patience. There is also a strange calm that settles into you, even when life remains intense. You don't panic the way you used to. You assess, you adapt, you move. This isn't emotional numbness. It's emotional efficiency. You've learned that energy spent on panic is energy stolen from direction. Be aware that challenges may still come, sometimes unexpectedly. Survival does not eliminate resistance. It changes its form. What once came as direct confrontation may now appear as distraction, temptation, or subtle misalignment. These are not attacks meant to end you. They are tests meant to refine you. You are being trained to move without excess, to speak without leakage, to care without attachment. This balance is not learned quickly, and it often feels uncomfortable at first. But every time you choose clarity over chaos, you reinforce the path that opened when you were spared. If you feel an internal push to simplify your life, to reduce noise, to step back from unnecessary complexity, listen to it. That instinct is not withdrawal. It is consolidation. You are gathering yourself into a more focused form. The moment they came for you forced an ending somewhere else. That ending made space, and now that space is asking to be filled with intention, not impulse, with direction, not repetition. You are no longer moving to prove survival was justified. You are moving because survival created an opening. And openings exist to be entered, not feared. This is the phase where you stop looking back to confirm what happened and start looking forward to honor it. By the time you reach this phase, You begin to understand that survival is not a moment you pass through, but a state you now live from. It changes how you interpret resistance. It changes how you define danger. What once terrified you now feels familiar, not because it's harmless, but because you've already faced the edge and remained. This doesn't make you reckless. It makes you grounded. You start to notice that your reactions have slowed, but your decisions have sharpened. You don't rush toward things just because they're loud or urgent. You wait. You observe how situations unfold without your interference. This patience is not passive. It is strategic. You learned without being taught that not everything requires your involvement to resolve itself. There is also a deep internal shift regarding control. You stop trying to manage outcomes and start managing alignment. You understand that forcing results often leads you back toward the very patterns you survived escaping. So now, instead of pushing, you position yourself. Instead of demanding clarity, you allow it to surface. And when it does, it feels undeniable. At this stage, solitude may increase. Not as isolation, but as selectiveness. You become careful with who has access to your thoughts, your plans, your vulnerabilities. This is not because you distrust everyone, but because you finally trust yourself enough to protect what's forming within you. What you carry now doesn't need to be exposed prematurely. You may also feel a growing discomfort with repetition. Old cycles feel heavier than before. Doing the same thing the same way begins to feel almost painful. This is because repetition without growth now feels like disrespecting the second chance you were given. Even if you never consciously asked for that chance, you are aware that it exists. Pay attention to how truth begins to surface around you without effort. Things people tried to hide become obvious. Intentions become transparent. Motives reveal themselves through behavior, not words. This isn't because the world changed. It's because your perception did. You see more because you ignore less. There may be moments when you feel pressure to explain yourself, to justify your pace or your choices. Resist that urge. The ones who need explanations are often not meant to understand your process. Your path is no longer communal. It's specific, and specificity rarely looks logical from the outside. You are also learning the difference between silence and suppression. Silence is chosen. Suppression is imposed. What you're practicing now is silence with awareness. You speak when your words add weight, not noise. This makes your presence unsettling to some, because you no longer fill space unnecessarily. Remember this: what ended when they came for you did not only clear danger, it cleared confusion. Even if clarity came slowly, it came. And once clarity arrives, pretending ignorance becomes impossible. You are not waiting for life to begin again. It already did. Quietly, decisively. And now you are learning how to walk forward without dragging the past behind you. This part of the journey doesn't demand action. It demands accuracy. And accuracy is built in stillness, not chaos. As this journey continues, you begin to recognize a subtle but undeniable shift in how reality responds to you. Not in a mystical or exaggerated way, but in patterns that repeat too consistently to ignore. Conversations arrive at the exact moment you need them. Delays prevent outcomes you later realize would have cost you more than you were ready to pay. Interruptions redirect you from paths that looked right but weren't aligned. This isn't coincidence, it's correction. You start to move with an internal compass rather than external validation. Approval loses its power over your decisions. You no longer feel the need to explain your instincts or translate your boundaries into something palatable for others. What matters now is coherence between what you sense and how you act. That coherence becomes your anchor. There is also a growing awareness that not every battle is meant to be confronted. After surviving what was meant to end you, you understand the difference between courage and exposure. Courage is choosing truth even when it isolates you. Exposure is offering yourself to unnecessary harm just to be seen. You no longer confuse the two. At this stage, responsibility deepens. not as pressure, but as ownership. You stop waiting for permission to become who you already are. You stop postponing decisions that have been asking for resolution. Procrastination feels heavier now, because you know that delay is often disguised avoidance. Survival sharpened your ability to recognize that. You may feel an internal pull toward order, simplifying systems, clarifying priorities, reducing emotional clutter. This isn't about control, it's about sustainability. You've learned that chaos consumes energy faster than conflict ever did, and you are no longer willing to spend your energy carelessly. Notice how your standards rise quietly. What you tolerate shifts. What you accept narrows. This doesn't make you rigid, it makes you intentional. You are no longer available for dynamics that require you to abandon yourself to maintain peace. You've seen what happens when peace is built on self-erasure. There will still be moments of doubt. Survival doesn't erase uncertainty, it reframes it. Doubt becomes a signal to pause, not a command to retreat. You've learned that fear often appears right before alignment, not after failure. So you no longer interpret discomfort as a sign to stop. You are also becoming more comfortable with the idea that some things will never be fully explained. Closure, in the traditional sense, may never arrive. But understanding has, and understanding is more stable than explanation. What you carry now is not urgency, but readiness. Not impatience, but availability. When the next step presents itself, you won't need to search for it. You'll recognize it by the absence of inner resistance. The attempt to end you did not create weakness. It refined resilience into something quieter and stronger. And now, as you move forward, you are no longer reacting to what happened. You are responding to what's possible. This is the stage where you stop asking whether you survived for a reason and start living as if you know the answer. At this final stage, something settles within you that no longer needs confirmation. You stop revisiting the moment they came for you, not because it lost meaning, but because it completed its work. The memory no longer pulls at you. It informs you. And that difference matters. You are no longer defined by what almost happened. You are defined by what continued. You realize now that survival was not the climax of your story. It was the threshold. Everything after it carries a different weight because you are carrying it differently. You don't chase intensity anymore. You recognize it. You don't seek purpose in noise. You hear it in stillness. This is why your presence feels grounded, even when circumstances are unstable. There is a quiet authority that forms when someone knows they were spared without needing to announce it. You don't posture. You don't threaten. You don't prove. You simply exist with an awareness that makes certain things impossible for you now. Betraying yourself, ignoring truth, wasting time pretending you don't know what you know. This is also where peace becomes non-negotiable. Not comfort, not ease, but inner alignment. You walk away faster from anything that disturbs your center, not out of fear, but out of respect for what it took to remain standing. You understand that your nervous system remembers things your mind may try to downplay. You honor that memory by choosing stability over chaos. You may notice that people respond to you differently now. Some become more honest around you. Some become more guarded. Some disappear without explanation. This is not loss. It is sorting. Your energy no longer blends easily with everything, and that is not a flaw. It is a filter. At this point, you stop asking for signs and start recognizing patterns. You trust timing without trying to control it. You move when movement feels clean. You wait when waiting feels clear. This is not hesitation. It is synchronization. The life that ended when they came for you did not create debt. It created direction. You are not here to repay survival with suffering. You are here to express it through clarity, integrity, and presence. Your life does not need to be dramatic to be meaningful. It needs to be true. There will be moments ahead that test this truth, not by threatening your existence, but by tempting you to abandon what you've learned. When those moments come, remember how far you've already walked beyond the ending that was prepared for you. You are no longer moving away from danger. You are moving toward alignment. And alignment, once chosen, reshapes everything it touches. This is not the end of the message. It is the completion of a cycle. What comes next will not arrive with warning. It will arrive with recognition. And when it does, you will be ready. Because you already survived what was never meant to define you. There is a moment, after everything has been understood and absorbed, when the weight finally lifts. Not because life becomes easier, but because you stop carrying what was never yours to hold. This is where you stand now. Not at the edge of survival, not in the shadow of threat, but in the quiet clarity that comes after something definitive has already passed. The danger is no longer ahead of you. It is behind you, and you are not running anymore. You begin to live differently here. Not dramatically, not loudly, but deliberately. Your days stop being reactions and start becoming responses. You don't wake up bracing yourself for impact. You wake up aware of your limits, aware of your direction, aware of what you will and will not allow into your life. This awareness is the true evidence of what you survived. What once felt like pressure now feels like guidance. What once felt like loss now feels like release. You understand that some things had to end permanently so you could move without restraint. And you no longer romanticize what was taken from you. You honor it by not trying to rebuild it. This is where confidence becomes quiet. You don't need reassurance every time you make a decision. You don't look around to see who agrees. You've learned that alignment often feels lonely at first, because it requires honesty before it attracts support. You trust yourself enough to stand in that gap. You may still encounter resistance, but it no longer shakes you. Resistance now feels like confirmation that you are moving in a direction that matters. You don't internalize it. You observe it. You don't fight every challenge. You let time and consistency do the work for you. Survival taught you that endurance is more powerful than force. There is also a deep forgiveness that settles in, not necessarily toward others, but toward yourself. You forgive yourself for not knowing then what you know now, for staying too long, for trusting too freely, for doubting your instincts. You understand that the version of you that existed before the moment they came for you did the best they could with the awareness they had, and that version brought you here. Now, you protect your future without resentment. You set boundaries without apology. You choose rest without guilt. You move forward without dragging old narratives along with you. This is not detachment from life. This is engagement without self-betrayal. You also stop fearing endings. You've seen that endings do not always mean loss. Sometimes they mean accuracy. You let things conclude when they no longer fit. You don't beg cycles to continue past their purpose. You trust that what aligns will remain without force. At this point, you no longer need to be reminded of what you survived. You feel it in how steady you've become, in how quickly you recover, in how clearly you see. The proof is in your posture toward life now. Open, but not unguarded. Hopeful, but not naive. Calm, but not passive. The attempt to end you created a line you cannot cross back over. You will never be the person who underestimates their own value again. You will never give full access to those who have not earned trust. You will never ignore your inner signals to keep external peace. That chapter is closed. What lies ahead does not require fear. It requires presence. It requires you to stay awake to your own life, to choose alignment repeatedly, even when distraction is easier, to remember that you are not here by accident and not here without protection, but also not here to waste what was preserved. This is the final truth you carry forward. You did not survive so you could live cautiously. You survived so you could live clearly. And clarity, once claimed, becomes the strongest form of power there is.